What if the very news designed to inform you is actually designed to make you angry?
Yeah.
And what if that anger is reshaping our society, maybe without us even realizing it?
That's a really provocative question, and it's right at the heart of the book we're exploring today, Chris Stirewalt's Broken News.
Right, broken news.
And this book, it doesn't just point fingers. It takes a really deep, critical look at where news is in America right now.
Mhm.
It argues that the dysfunction we're all seeing, it's not just about left versus right. It's actually harming everyone, no matter where you sit politically.
Okay.
And it's not about being nostalgic for some, perfect past of journalism that never really existed. It's more about understanding these historical cycles of media disruption to figure out a way forward.
Exactly. And our mission today, really, is to give you a shortcut to being well-informed.
Mm-hmm.
Not just about the headlines, but about the way news works now.
The mechanics of it.
Yeah, the mechanics. We want to equip you with some tools, maybe, to critically look at the information you see every day. Help you gain knowledge faster and hopefully avoid that feeling of just being overwhelmed.
Which is easy to feel these days.
Oh, absolutely. And to help with that even more, remember you can check out Mindful Moments over on our YouTube channel. It offers AI book analysis that's really aimed at inspiring reflection and, rational thought.
That's a great resource. So maybe let's start where the book starts, with what it calls the media's disordered judgment.
Disordered judgment, okay.
Yeah, Stirewalt explains how technological disruption, think the internet, social media, has led many media outlets to kind of lose touch with the, quote, real world. And there's this term from a media scholar, Andrei Miroshnichenko, post-journalism.
Post-journalism. That sounds significant. How different is that, really, from the old model? What does it mean day to day for someone just scrolling through their phone?
Oh, it's a fundamental shift. I mean, traditionally, news outlets made money by selling big, broad audiences to advertisers.
Yeah. Right. Eyeballs on ads.
Exactly. But that model kind of fell apart with digital media. So now the focus is different. It's about cultivating highly habituated users.
Habituated users. Like addicts.
Sort of, yeah. They do this by creating really strong emotional connections. They tap into feelings like fear, resentment, anger.
The strong stuff.
The really strong stuff. Because that turns users into members of a tribe. So the business model shifts from selling facts to advertisers to basically selling belonging and emotion directly to the user.
So my newsfeed isn't just telling me what happened, it's trying to make me feel a certain way about it. Probably outraged.
That's often the goal, yeah. Outrage keeps you clicking, keeps you engaged.
Oh.
Which leads right into this idea of tribal outrage.
Okay.
The book points out how even some, traditionally quite serious outlets, it mentions the Washington Post as an example, pivoted towards what Stirewalt calls, pretty bluntly, brain-dead partisan tribalism.
Wow,
using contempt against political opponents just to get those clicks.
Because outrage sells.
Exactly. Stirewalt puts it plainly. Tribal outrage is easy, cheap, and entertaining, especially when you compare it to balanced, thoroughly reported news, which is hard to do, expensive, and often boring, let's be honest.
Yeah, fair point.
And you see this playbook, adopted with different levels of success by networks like Fox News or MSNBC. Ratings often seem to drive the content more than, say, traditional journalistic principles.
What's really striking, though, reading this, is that it feels so current. But the book argues these aren't actually new problems.
That's such a crucial takeaway. It really puts things in perspective. Stirewalt draws this direct line back to the penny press in the 1830s.
The 1830s, really?
Yeah, these early cheap newspapers also relied heavily on, guess what? Performative outrage, selective coverage, and tribalism. It's like a pattern that repeats whenever new technology shakes things up.
Huh. And it wasn't just print, right? The book talks about radio, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about the 1930s and someone like Father Charles Coughlin.
I've heard that name. Controversial figure.
Hugely. He mixed this sort of social justice progressivism with what the book calls bloody-minded cultural warfare, and he reached, estimates say, 30 million listeners.
30 million? Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't just talk. It had a measurable impact on voting patterns. It really shows how even a medium you passively listen to can have this dazing, almost anesthetic effect, as the book puts it. Kind of scary, actually.
It is. And the connection between media and politics goes back even further, doesn't it?
Oh, centuries. The book mentions Benjamin Franklin. As postmaster, he had a surprising amount of influence over which early colonial newspapers got delivered easily and cheaply.
So we could basically pick winners and losers based on postal rates.
To some extent, yes. It just highlights that this link between press and power and the potential for manipulation, it's not a new invention of the internet age. It's baked in historically.
Okay, so we've got historical patterns, we've got the current media business model. How do we fit into this? Our own psychology?
Right, because it's not just them, it's us too. The book connects this to how political parties have changed. Things like the McCain-Feingold campaign finance law or the Citizens United Supreme Court decision.
Those limited party power in some way.
Exactly. They weakened the national party structures. So less money flowed through the official parties and way more started going to these independent groups.
Super PACs and the like.
Yeah. And donors often fund these outside groups whose main goal isn't necessarily long-term party health, it's just winning the next election.
Oh, yeah.
Now, which means they have very little incentive to compromise or be moderate. Their incentive is pure victory, and often the easiest path to that is through stoking outrage and demonizing the other side in the media they fund or influence.
And our brains kind of help them do that, don't they? The book talks about the fundamental attribution error.
Yes. This is fascinating. It's this unconscious bias we all have. When someone else messes up, we tend to blame their character or the group they belong to.
Like the classic example. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you immediately think,
what a jerk. Or worse, right? You assume that's who they are, maybe even fill in details about people like that. You don't usually think, oh, maybe they're rushing to the hospital.
guilty as charged.
We all are. And this tendency is exactly what the book calls media rage merchants exploit. They convince us the other side isn't just wrong on policy, they're fundamentally bad people. Wicked, even.
Which makes compromise impossible. And then there's the flip side, the hostile media effect.
Ah, yes. This is our tendency to see even fair news coverage as biased against our own side.
Even if it's balanced.
Even if it's meticulously balanced. The book cites this classic Stanford study about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They showed the exact same news reports to pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian groups.
Oh, yeah.
Both groups saw the same coverage as biased against them.
Wow. So our own biases filter how we even perceive objective facts.
Absolutely. Stirewalt even admits, look, he knows about this bias, but he still gets mad about perceived mountain bias in sports coverage for his teams. He knows it's likely not real, but he feels it anyway.
So if even he struggles with it, what hope is there?
Well, understanding it is the first step, and the book doesn't shy away from discussing journalism's own internal biases either.
Okay, like what?
It talks about an implicit left-leaning bias in many newsrooms, not necessarily intentional malice, but often stemming from geographic and cultural isolation.
How so?
Well, it points out that something like 92% of journalists work in just 11 counties in the U.S., and those counties are overwhelmingly blue America.
Meaning areas that tend to vote Democrat and share a certain cultural outlook.
Exactly. So you can get this bubble effect. There was a study back in 2005, Gross, Close, and Milio, looking at which think tanks journalists cited.
And
it indicated a pretty pronounced leftward slant in mainstream press citations over a long period. Again, the book stresses this is often more about that cultural isolation, shared assumptions within the bubble, not some grand conspiracy. It's unconscious bias shaping the lens.
So biases on all sides. Media creators, media consumers, and then you add personalities into the mix.
Right. The book argues news has shifted heavily towards personality-driven coverage, and that can lead towards a kind of nihilism.
Nihilism. How?
Think of that character Lonesome Rhodes from the old movie A Face in the Crowd. Andy Griffith plays him. He says, I'm not just an entertainer. I'm an influencer, a wielder of opinion, a force.
Ah, okay. Blurring entertainment and influence.
Totally. And Stirewalt highlights figures like Donald Trump. He argues Trump became president not just because he was good on TV, but because he was TV. He understood how to make compelling television, constantly.
Which drove ratings through the roof. I remember the Les Moonves quote.
The infamous quote from the former CBS head, "It may not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS."
Yeah.
That sums up the incentive structure, doesn't it?
Chillingly well, yeah.
And it's not just Trump. The book points to politicians across the spectrum, mentioning Ted Cruz and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as examples of using performative outrage.
Performative outrage, meaning putting on a show.
Essentially, yeah. Using social media, congressional hearings, whatever platform they have, to generate celebrity and engagement. Turning serious proceedings into what the book calls cheesy daytime talk.
Sacrificing actual lawmaking for.
Or for clicky sound bites. It's optimizing for attention, not necessarily for policy results.
In all this constant performance, this non-stop outrage, what does that do to us, the audience?
It leads to burnout. The book calls it crisis fatigue.
Crisis fatigue. I feel that.
Right. When every issue is framed as an existential crisis, banana fungus, space junk, the debt ceiling, eventually you just get numb.
If everything's a crisis, then nothing really is.
Exactly. You tune out. And this overhyped anxiety, as the book puts it, distracts us from actual tangible problems we could be solving. It fuels these collective action problems where we can't seem to get anything done.
And is this related to newsloaf? What's that?
Yeah, newsloaf is Stirewalt's term for that recycled low-nutrition news. Content designed purely for engagement, clicks, shares not real information.
How do you spot it?
The book suggests asking yourself, is this controversy actually consequential? Does it matter in the real world, or is it just designed to make me feel angry or anxious?
If it only makes you feel, maybe skip it.
That's the advice, yeah. And think about how everything seems political now. Stirewalt mentions how filler content stuff originally for slow news days has become politicized.
Like what?
He uses an example of a potato chip taste test. Even something that trivial can get twisted into some kind of political conflict online now.
That's absurd.
It is, but it creates these political junkies who are obsessed with the drama, the lip flap and consequence-free tweets, totally detached from actual policy or governance.
Okay, so it paints a pretty bleak picture. How do we start to fix this? Rebuild something better?
Well, the book acknowledges the huge challenge of post-journalism, where media outlets needing new revenue essentially become commanders in the culture war, pushing agendas instead of reporting news.
So what's the solution there?
One major point the book hammers home is the critical importance of local news.
Local news. But it's struggling so much.
Terribly. Staggering losses. Thousands of papers closed. Many counties are news deserts now with no daily paper. But despite all its flaws, local news is vital for government accountability.
Because if no one's watching.
If no one's watching City Hall or the school board, you often get worse government, as the book says, more waste, more corruption, higher costs for taxpayers eventually.
Makes sense.
And it distinguishes between real accountability and just transparency. Dumping thousands of pages of documents online isn't accountability.
Right, it's overwhelming.
Exactly. Accountability needs journalists with time, resources, and adhering to basic professional standards to actually dig through that stuff, find out what matters, and explain it. It needs interpretation.
Okay, so supporting local news is one thing. But what about us as individuals navigating this mess? What can we do? The book mentions George Washington.
Yeah, Washington's call for an enlightened public opinion. The book suggests a few things for us, the news consumers. First, actively cultivate a varied news diet.
Don't just stay in your bubble.
Exactly. Seek out other ideas, different perspectives. The book says it helps inoculate yourself against bubbled thinking. Think of it like, I don't know, intellectual cross-training.
I like that. What else?
Prioritize consequential news. Really try to learn the difference between important stuff and that news loaf designed just to make you mad.
Ask, is this controversy consequential?
That's the key question. If a story mainly just triggers an emotion without giving you real, useful information, maybe step away. Your attention is valuable.
That requires some self-discipline, though, especially with the brain biases we talked about.
It does, and that leads to the next point. Practice skepticism, but not cynicism. There's a difference.
Okay, you explain that.
Cynicism just assumes everyone is corrupt and nothing matters. Skepticism questions claims and looks for evidence. The book warns that our wonderful mind is too good at rationalizing why the feelings you have are right.
We want to believe what we already believe.
Precisely. So be skeptical, especially of studies or stories that perfectly confirm your existing biases. The book uses an example like a study saying smokers have a harder time getting jobs.
Which might seem obvious or fit a bias.
Right. But a skeptic asks, okay, why? Is it just the smoking? Or are there underlying socioeconomic factors? Maybe different types of people choose to smoke. Dig deeper than the easy answer.
That's a good discipline. What about for the journalists themselves?
For the industry, the book is basically a call to return to core principles. Fight for aspirational fairness and impartiality, even if perfect objectivity is impossible.
Aspirational fairness, striving for it.
Yes, and it emphasizes civic duty as an organizing principle. That idea needs to come back to fight the cynicism within the industry itself and to foster, useful discourse in a healthy republic.
It sounds like it comes back to responsibility, even for seemingly small things. That potato chip story.
Right. Stirewalt tells that anecdote about running a potato chip taste test early in his career. A local brand did poorly. He realized later, even something that light, that fluffy, needs to be handled ethically. You don't want to needlessly trash a local business or fuel pointless controversy.
Professional standards apply even to the filler.
Absolutely. It's about respecting the subjects and the audience.
So, at the end of the day, while the news environment has huge challenges, understanding how it works and how our own minds work gives us some power back.
That's the core message, I think. It's not hopeless. Understanding the mechanisms, our biases that empowers us, the ability to create a better informed society the book suggests really lies with us, the consumers.
By choosing what we consume, how we react, what we support, actively engaging discerningly, maybe supporting outlets trying to do good work.
Prioritizing factual reporting, constructive dialogue, pushing back against just pure emotional manipulation.
It's an ongoing effort for all of us. And if you're interested in more analyses like this one, remember to check out Mindful Moments on YouTube and also explore our podcasts for other explorations into important topics.
Definitely. And please consider subscribing if you haven't. Share this discussion if you found it valuable, maybe with someone who feels overwhelmed by the news. You can find a link to purchase the book Broken News in our description if you want to read it yourself.
And most importantly, keep thinking critically. Question the information you consume every single day. That's perhaps the biggest takeaway.